Coming to you from rugby's greatest fortress, New Zealand's national stadium, Eden Park, is the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Kia ora and welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. After a wonderful weekend of rugby, both Super Rugby and Six Nations, we're going to get into those upsets. We're here at Eden Park, of course, where the Chiefs came to beat the Blues. We saw the Highlanders. Well, they got up against the Crusaders. Not many people were picking that. The Scottish, wow, Six Nations action was great. We've also got a wonderful interview for you with Stephen Perofeta. You can catch that entire interview on at Aotearoa Rugby Pod Official. We'll give you a snippet in the podcast today of that interview. Stephen, who's been through so many injuries in his time, he had a tough time. And he tells us the story about how he came back and the dark time that he had and how it is that he is back at rugby. So it's well worth the watch. We'll give you a snippet in the show today. Jipper next to me, you loved having rugby back.
It was a smorgasbord of entertainment. I tell you what, I think I've even... Super Rugby has got my wife engaged. That means it must be hitting all entertainment spots. None of this Love Island or whatever. It's just all out rugby in our household, and everyone's on board.
No second screens. She's not in the corner.
No second screens. No, there's probably a lot of second screens. But no, it was seriously entertaining.
Yeah, fair enough. It was really good. We'll be bringing you plenty of rugby content throughout the year. Go to our channels at Aotearoa Rugby Pod Official, and you can get our stuff there. That's across all of the different platforms, YouTube, socials, audio pods with Apple and Spotify and the other audio pod distributors. We also have our partnerships. Stuff.co.nz is New Zealand's biggest news website. Catch the full pod, get written articles, snippets. You can also get us at Rugby Pass. You can catch the full podcast, have a look at their stats. They're helping us bring you the stats each week. Their match centres have got so much good stuff in them. So plenty of places to catch the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. And of course, our man out of Japan is Bryn Hall. Brinner, boy, did you enjoy that weekend of footy first up?
There was so much footy. I just thought about Jipper the whole time because there was Six Nations, there was Super Rugby, and I just thought my mate, he'll be on the couch with the Sky all the time, being able to watch all the games. But no, Super Rugby was a great start. Look, the Highlanders, you look at the Chiefs and the Blues, the Derby games, and even the Australians as well, the Waratahs and that Reds game was a great watch as well. So we'll dive into the Six Nations, which I think Italy are my new favourite team, guys. I'm not going to lie. Watching them is really awesome to be able to see where they've come the last 12 months. So we'll go a little bit deeper around in the back end of the show. But rugby's back, men. Rugby's back, and how good to be able to start out week 2 with our episode as well.
What are your initial reactions to what we saw across the board in Super Rugby?
Oh, look, I think it was a little bit scrappy, because I suppose there's quite a high error count, especially for the teams that lost. And a high penalty count. I suppose you can expect that in the initial stages, but I think a lot of it came from the collision area. Like, I don't know if it's up the ante, but even being sidelined, I felt like the venom, like even some of Peter Key's tackles, like he was literally, I called him the hematoma giver. Like he was just handing out hematomas left, right and centre. But I felt like because there was such a vicious nature in the collision, it made it look probably worse statistically. But I felt, even though there was a bit of a stop-start nature, especially in the first sort of 20 or 30 of each game, man, the closeness of each game, going into the half, you didn't know who was going to win. And I really liked that spectacle. Like, had you on the edge of your seat, and it left a very nice taste in your mouth when the game went down to that 80-minute hooter.
The Chiefs game came down to the wire. A moment of brilliance with Tupaea and Simipeni Finau giving that ball into Cortez was really the difference in a pretty defensive-heavy game for that Blues game. And then you look at the Zoo in terms of what the Highlanders were able to do. Their attacking ability with their outside backs on the edge. Probably the errors from the Crusaders was probably their letdown in that game. But look, the competitiveness, the ability to be able to how close it was, especially in the first round. And I think no doubt throughout the next couple of weeks, the high error rate, I think will go down a little bit more, and we'll see a little bit more clinicalness from all the New Zealand teams and the Australian teams as well moving forward.
There have been pre-season games. There has been a lot of training. Why is it that it's always a little bit like that at the start?
I think it's because you have to give everyone a go to work out who you're going to pick in round 1 in pre-season. And I suppose then sort of players coming in late, but a lot of the teams, I think, dealt with it really well by having them on the bench and nearly proved the difference for the Crusaders and certainly proved the difference for the Chiefs. So I think there's a whole element of things. I think there's also a ruling around, globally, because we're not fixated on these other tournaments, there is a rule between 10 and 12 weeks sort of non-contact for every player, and that's a big focus of the international rugby players and World Rugby to try and, I suppose, give the body, but also, I suppose, the subconcussive knocks a break. So there's those sorts of things that, you've got to get that balance right, otherwise we won't have a game. So I think it's just feeling each other out. And I also think teams go out with a hiss and a roar, and sometimes leads to players going in ones and twos rather than a connected sort of unit. So, many sort of factors. There's also the excitement, and I suppose that desperation to finally be playing and getting the pre-season out the back. So I think there's a number of elements, but I think it's mainly because both sides are trying. Probably a little bit too hard.
So Sebastian Curry, you sent an email through to us talking about, I suppose, the way that the All Blacks don't come in and whether or not that shows that Super Rugby is very much a second priority for New Zealand rugby in comparison to the All Blacks. But hopefully that 12-week concussion thing answers that question to some degree.
Yeah, people fixate on the All Blacks, but it's All Blacks 15, it's Māori. They play 34 games over the year. You go to French top league, we're talking 40, 45.
Britt, in your experience, the transition and managing the transition, obviously you played in the Crusaders team stacked with All Blacks. Managing that transition and making sure that the team doesn't sort of lose early on and then slowly build up. How difficult is that, and what is the best process for a team with a number of representative players to navigate those first 3 or 4 weeks well?
That's a really good question, Ross. I feel like we found it a little bit harder in probably the back end of when I was there the last 2 or 3 years. I think the All Blacks kind of get drip fed in the back end of preseason. Some of them don't play any preseason games. Some of them actually take a little bit of rest within the first or second week, coming off the bench or not playing. And I guess it's been able to just try and accumulate as many wins as you can in that first part, because you just know it's going to be clunky. And, this is pretty traditional for the Crusaders if they do start slow, because, guys are coming back a little bit later with how many All Blacks they do. The Blues, Chiefs, whoever it may be, that probably leads to why there is a high error rate. But I think, to be honest, it's the guys that have done the job in the preseason. It's been able to give them opportunities and been able to play. You reward their preseason format and be able to get them out there, and then I guess throughout the duration of the year, bring back in those All Blacks, been able to give them a few reps, I guess at the start of the year, and then when you kind of have seen the Crusaders, or I think more so maybe even some of the teams that have a lot of All Blacks at the back end of the year, they're kind of purring. But I guess in the first part, for me, whenever I was there, it was being able to accumulate as many points as we could in the first 3 to 4 weeks. If they are ugly, so be it. But then with the hopes of being able to gain, I guess, 2 or 3 wins, and then be able to, I guess, at the back end of the year and through the middle of the year, being able to get your synergy and being able to get all cylinders firing.
What are your thoughts from other teams that maybe didn't have as many? The Blues probably didn't have 12 All Blacks in the side. When you've only got 3 or 4 and they're very much in key positions, what's that like?
When you've played a lot of rugby, actually you don't need that bigger leader. I think the bigger factor is it's not about the individual. I think the individual can get ready, but I think it's about the connections, potential, if new coaches come in, there may be terminology changes. But all that work, even though they might not be, in as such physically, they'll be in there understanding the calls, the game plans. Like, Bryn, you're a classic case, not an All Black tourist, but Razor and the crew gave you off till after New Year's, but you still knew your mental prep, you knew your homework, and you knew how the team was going to play and any sort of evolutions in your game plan?
Yeah, it was. And I think, for me personally, when you kind of have the time with the same coaching group, with the same players, it doesn't take you that long to be able to find your groove again. But I think more so for the All Blacks, they would come more so at the last 2 weeks, I'd say that they would kind of filter back in, and, even though you do have the same game plan, you've got the same evolution, and it's pretty similar. I think it's more so the little feels that you do get. You can do as many trainings as you want, but having the game feels and being able to get the scenario feels under pressure, get the fatigue, and being able to have that, it does take a little bit of a leader. Now, we were really lucky that the guys were pretty well acclimatized to, I think, being All Blacks and understanding what it took for them individually, because they did it a lot and they were pretty consistent being All Blacks and coming back a little bit late. But we did find, I guess, more so in the back end of my time with the Crusaders, the first couple of weeks, we found it really clunky. The high error rate, which we probably saw on the weekend, the penalties, and I think, we tried to be able to adapt to that and find solutions with that. But I guess in the first part of the year, it was a little bit of a struggle for us to be able to get our rhythm. Whereas some teams like the Highlanders, when I was there weren't that many All Blacks. You would find them, I guess, being able to be a little bit more, have a little bit more rhythm and being able to look less clunky with what we saw.
if you look at it statistically, the All Blacks weren't making the mistakes.
We didn't talk a lot about Quinn Tupaea last week, but Brynner, after seeing him, suddenly I was thinking, should he have been in our Player of the Year conversation? Because that defensive effort, that attacking effort, his work at the breakdown, the man is just incredible.
He could arguably have been in an MVP race for his time last year. But look, yeah, I think all the things you touched on, Ross, it's his collision work in terms of when he's got the ball in hand, he's able to get over the advantage line defensively. His collisions around whether it's for his tackle and the breakdown, it's something that's really big positive when it comes to Quinn. And I think, through the duration of the competition, with no Anton Leonard-Brown, Daniel Rona will have more combinations between those two. But I think he's going to be a big part for that Chiefs team with what he does, not only in the attacking side, but the defensive work and around the breakdown and the collision area, which Jips has touched on, was a really big part of what we saw in the first week of Super Rugby Pacific. He's going to be huge for this Chiefs team for 2025.
Defensively, the Chiefs at 92%, only missed 14 tackles, made 164. Definitely the Blues had more of the ball and more opportunity to score points. And the biggest thing, their discipline, only 9 penalties. Speaking with John O'Gibbs after the game, he was very measured in saying that could have gone either way. But when it became that arm wrestle, when it became that last 10 minutes, and probably similar to the Highlanders, they were just really clinical and probably just played it a little safer and read what defensive pitches there was. If we go through the match-winning try of Cortez Ratama, you can see players, obviously when you rewatch it, they're dropping back, the ball's already in Jacob's hand, and there's other forwards dropping back, and there's back swinging, and then Peter Aki's that edge defender, and where Sammy Penny comes from, he's wide and deep, you can't even see him in the camera, it doesn't even look like someone's connected with Tupaea from a wide angle. Tupaea holds his feet, keeps square, almost draws the defence out, while Peter's having to look out the back, and then boom, cuts a line, Sammy Penny, and then links up with Cortez Ratama, as all good nines will do. But you actually saw his injection of pace. He was going expecting it to be tackled, and then bang, he changed and injected. So I just think crucial moments, they manipulated the fence. They played the chess, not checkers, and they got the result. But it was pretty well done by Sammy Penny. The width, the distance to drag the attention of Peraki, but also the players out the back. I think it was Tupaea Cook-Savage was swinging. So, you had to make a decision. And that's when you're running a clean attack, when the defender has to make a decision, and it's one or other. And, obviously he made the one to go out. He got his hand to Sammy Penny, but the line he cut and the width he came from, the squareness of Tupaea just exposed that hole beautifully.
Well, and that was really the difference. There wasn't much between them, Jip. I think, look, there were a lot of errors. I really enjoyed probably actually the Blues and how they actually were a little bit more expensive with Stephen Perofeta. There were a lot of times he was able to get the ball over the edge, some really good long passes to be able to get the ball to Caleb Clark and their wingers on the outside, and they showed a little bit more interplay. They were a little bit more expensive, which we probably haven't seen from the Blues with Vern Cotter. It was very successful when they won their title, keeping it really tight, but it just does seem that through their attack, through Dan Halangahu, it seems like they are going to be a little bit more expensive this year, which I guess, Jipper, is quite exciting if you are a Blues fan.
I think there's a lot to like about the Blues. If you compared to round one last year, they were in this contest. They'd probably be a bit disappointed. They probably should have come away with that if they'd made some different decisions around option taking at penalty time. But I take your point, especially in the 22. Like they're way more expansive. And the best example was in the second half. There's the forward pod, which is the pod of 3. You had Josh Berry in the middle, pod of 3, and he had an inside clean and a tip runner. And then there was another pod of 3 out here. But Hoskins Satutu was actually the middle runner. Bradley Slater was the inside runner of that pod. And you could see Josh Berry got a call from Slater, and he looks out, he catches in the first pod, skip past his tip player, and Bradley Slater's coming on a similar angle to Sammy Penny-Finau in the other pod. And it just shows, I think, what that says to the defence is you're going to have to always be on, because the Chiefs just assumed they were going to crash and bash through Berry. But through that innovation, now teams are going to be wary, which may create more opportunity to get back to their crash and bash because they're worried out here. But Slater runs a nice downline, falls just short. But that, to me, shows that they've learned a lot. And they've learned a lot of when it comes to finals footy, they know they can be in the contest, but they've got to get there a little bit easier. Because their crash and bash style was very effective. They were very close to getting up over the Crusaders and Christchurch in the semi-finals. So they know when it gets tight and pressure, they've got that game, but they need to evolve this game early doors. And I think the trip to Aussie is massive for them.
Getting a couple of wins over there and coming back. If you don't, your season again is like last year where you're
Lost
fighting.
3 in a row.
Yeah.
I think they're aware of that. There was a lot of disappointment. And look, the Force are a good showing. It'll be hot over there, and then obviously I think they've got the Brumbies after that, which won't be easy. So they definitely, I think this week's the most important, and they need to put a performance on, try to get a bonus point, and sort of step into this competition. Because you're right, she's hard going to go to Canberra if you're 0-2.
Yeah, the Force put on a good first half, didn't they? But then the Brumbies just smoked them.
And you talk about the 50-22. For some reason, the New Zealand teams, I don't think, have trained or looked at it. But when you look at the Brumbies Force game, I think it was Meredith's try, you saw a great pass from Lonergan. And because they're dropped back in that 50-22 backfield, it's actually quite simple draw and pass. And you saw the same with the Force. Was it Molini? Molini's try. And I think Donaldson did the little kick in the corner, but they got on the outside because they were dropped in the back play inside to Donaldson. Nice little kick, bounced up. But I felt like the Aussie teams really exposed that new 50-22 and I suppose the backfield being a little bit fuller. And then if you look at the Moana Pacifica game, Willie Havili, and I feel like this is where you can expose it through a kick, even if there's backfield cover, because they're still, from the games I watched live and wide angle, they're still in the backfield with 2 fullbacks, Bryn. So it's actually the kick across your body where the blindside wing is up a little bit more. And Willie Havili did it perfectly against the Drua and got a 50-22, which led to that hot start of 21-0. So I think hopefully sides can see. So for the right footer, you're kicking back to the left corner. For the left footer, you're kicking back to the right corner because it's sort of no man's land. And then if you have to put all 3 back there, Bryn, that really destroys your pendulum. Like it makes you quite a passive D-line. And that's when they can use the ball like we saw the Brumbies and Force do.
That's the important thing, I think, being able to see what the clear picture is in front of you. And I think the communication skills, whether it's your winger, of course, they need to be able to see that space. The kicker as well, being able to see it. But your midfielders, and if you're an edge forward, being able to see what's in front of you. Because I think you are right. If you've got 3 in the backfield or sometimes even 4, being able to go and play and being able to play on top of teams to get over the advantage line, then being able to bring them up. You might have 2 bunkers that are in the backfield. That opens up the middle of the field, whether it's a little kick from 9 or a 10 might be able to find grass and bounce into the 22. Then they kick it out and you're able to be able to restart. So I think the importance of being able to see what is in front of you, and it doesn't matter kind of what number is on your back, being able to give that information into your kicker, whether it's your first pivot, your second pivot, to be able to try and exploit that 50-22 or running, will be, I think, a little bit more better from the New Zealand teams in the second half, I guess, in the next couple of weeks when they play more games.
There was another thing which had some interesting rules connected to it over the weekend. We had 2 very different rulings on jumping over players to score a try. On one hand, we had Tupaea go in and dive over the top and get awarded a try. On the other hand, we had Matasera over at the Waratahs jump over the top of a ruck to score a try and have it not awarded. So we've had a question through from Damien, and his question essentially was about, what is legal there and what isn't legal. Well, referees will go by law 9.11 as far as dangerous play is concerned. And remember when Peter Gasoakula jumped over a player, and we saw Karantai Moifalau hurdle a player, and you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to jump over a player. But if you are diving to score a try, you are allowed to dive and jump in. So the question is, at what point is this a dive for a try and when is it not? And we had 2 different rulings with people crossing the line, diving over players on the weekend. And the laws almost allow for both, Jip.
They do, and then I suppose it's refs' interpretation. But I think Tupaea's one, because it didn't seem right to me, but I think to the letter of the law, it is correct, because I remember Ireland did it through a tap move. I think it was the hooker. Kelleher. The free kick before, he ran hard and low. So he set them up. And then the next one, he did the dive over and scored.
Yeah.
And I think, I do think, Tupaea was given it this one, He had read the situation. He knew they were going to go low, and he had a crack, and it was pretty impressive, because I can't imagine you'd plan for that. So that got awarded. The one thing I think that is different from a danger point of view, are you genuinely in a try-scoring position jumping over a ruck?
Yeah.
I'm just not sure you are. So I feel like that would be deemed more dangerous because there's so many bodies there.
Yeah.
Potentially someone in behind that you can clash heads with, whereas it was pretty open, clear air.
Yeah.
With Tupaea. I don't know if that's...
Well, and I think that is the truth, because when it comes down to it, it's a dangerous play law. So the referee's got the ability to judge the danger in the play.
And I think that's why maybe they differ, because they weren't exactly the same in that sense.
Yeah.
If you also look at Dan Sheehan in the Ireland game, he gets penalised because he's jumping over it, trying to do the exact same that you were talking about with Kelleher, and then ends up getting penalised for it as well. So I think, like you say, Ross, there is that interpretation of, I guess, what the referees do think that is a penalty or not. But if you do look at that Ireland game, hopefully you boys did see it, that Sheehan was trying to do that to not what Tupaea was, but to Kelleher's example maybe last year, and he did actually get penalised from it. It was officiated by the ref as a penalty.
But I think the difference between Kelleher is it came from a free kick. So I feel like if there's a ruck close, you're putting the ref in a position. And even though there was a ruck there with Tupaea,
He was a couple off.
he was quite a wee way off when he dived over. As a player, I'm just trying to think as a player, how am I going to make an adjustment? Because everyone's going to start trying to do it because you want to get low because it's just too easy to score if you don't. But then are we going to raise and we're going to clash heads or shoulders to heads? And then it's interesting, what's the off-field review going to be? Or is there going to be a yellow card? Because it wouldn't be malicious. But it does open up a can of worms, allowing it.
Yes.
Quite a significant can of worms, I think. And I think you're going to see more sides do it because they're going to go, oh, well, that was good for the goose, it's good for the gander.
Well, it also wasn't good for the goose.
Yeah.
But Damien had a suggestion, and please email us, arp@fandommedia.co.nz. Damien had a suggestion. My suggestion is to allow diving for a try when both players are in full motion, like a winger and cover coming across, or the try-scoring action involves a swerve or a sidestep, but diving for a try when the dive is directly over an attempted legal tackle is not allowed. That kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I think that's how I probably interpreted it was. But I must admit, it did take me back. I think it was probably one of my last games against the Highlanders here, just after my daughter was born, and I tried to do the old jump over, and I got absolutely snapped back. I got put back about 5 metres, so it's not always effective. Maybe it's because I was a white battler, but it's certainly not always an effective option. My wife, when I got home, Sam was like, I'm pretty sure you did that. And I was like, oh my God, I did. And then I was like, oh yeah, but I got smoked, so no one remembered it. I got absolutely smoked.
Get some more fast twitch muscles.
Yeah. Tom Coventry still thinks I butchered a try. If I just scooped, it would have gone in. Anyway.
This is a great time now. Dripper said the white battler. There's 2 clips you can show from that. The back flick to Matt Duffy, and then his 40-metre try against the Waratahs. Great opportunity now to put that in our handles.
Hey, thanks,
Jay's
Brent.
pass is not the white battler.
Always got my back.
Absolutely not, mate. I've seen the flare. Mate.
For the number of times we've thrown him to the wolves over Ardie,
he's come and picked me up.
He's a far better person than we are.
Got to get in there. Or actually, my wife got me. Anyway, move on.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the Highlanders Crusaders. Brenna, there was something about the last 15 minutes, about the way that the Highlanders battled through that in a pressure game.
I was really impressed with how the Highlanders were able to deal with a lot of pressure situations in the game. I think, if you look around for both teams, the Crusaders probably, when it came to the pressure moments, weren't able to be able to execute. So, looking at probably last 10 minutes was a big part of it. A lot of that was kind of a contestable game. Both teams are trying to be able to not play too much, being able to go to the box kick, being able to, I guess, exert pressure through a pressure game. And, whether that's through Lennox or Falau Fakatava in the first half, I thought the DNA of how the Highlanders were playing, 44 kicks, were able to have a balance of contestables, kicking line and being able to build pressure. But if you look at probably the big moment that I thought in the game, and look, there were a lot of moments, and both teams have come back and been able to have their review of how they could have done things better. But look, I think Cody Taylor's missed pass to Shea Fihaki was a big moment in the game. I think if he does find that pass, Shea Fihaki scores in that corner, and then builds more pressure to the Highlanders to be able to come back through that. And I think the discipline issues of the Crusaders as well. I think Jamie Hanna in the last 3 or 4 minutes gives away a penalty. Cody Taylor gets that little chip kick and gives Cam Miller to be able to add another opportunity to win a game, and proving that he has ice in his veins for that Highlanders or the Otago team. So I just think in the last 10 minutes, the Highlanders were able to execute a little bit better with the pressure game.
The old Cam Miller effect. I tell you what, you could put side by side the Otago versus Bay of Plenty match winner and the Highlanders Crusaders. It's pretty much the exact same spot. And he just loves it. He lives for that moment. He doesn't even look flustered. But yeah, massive result. I think probably the biggest thing I think the Crusaders will look at is in terms of the breakdown steals, the Highlanders had 8 to their 1. In terms of getting their attack going, it was almost like, to Bryn's point, like the Highlanders' DNA, especially under the roof, is to kick the ball back, and they love to defend. But it's because they love to get into your breakdown. I thought Lucas Casey was great, especially on debut. He certainly is one to watch going into the season, but it's just very un-Crusader-like to have 8 breakdown turnovers. And I think you'll see a noticeable difference. I think it was probably the same in the Blues. A lot of Quinn Tupaea's turnovers were a disconnect by the ball carrier. So you make half a break. Now, it feels good as the ball carrier, but if you leave your mates behind or they get checked by a defender so that someone can access your ball, it's actually not a good result. So I think both those sides will need to, maybe tighten up or just be a little bit more explosive if they know the ball carrier is carrying, maybe more explosive in to try and help them through the collision or get around defenders quicker, because that separation for the Crusaders just created opportunities for a loose forward trio that is built to turnover. Like they're not like a Kino, McCaw, Reed, big, tall.
There are positive things for the Crusaders as well. Look, Will Jordan, I think his impact of when he came on, he was, we talked about him being in the MVP race, and I think he'll be in and around that, definitely the back end of there. And they are a different team when Will does come on. But look, if you do look at the stats, they had 21 turnovers, they had 10 line breaks, had 918 carry meters, they had 11 entries, they're at 18%, which in terms of the stat have been able to gain points through that, which is very un-Crusader-like. So, the work on from that, they had a lot of opportunities to be able to try and to have points, but the high turnover rate, the efficiency inside the 22, wasn't it? The breakdown turnovers, which was a massive Achilles heel, with Jip kind of touched on. They weren't able to build any form of momentum consistently, but when push came to shove in that last couple of minutes, they were ahead and they did enough to be able to win that game. But I think the points that I did touch on in that last 10 minutes gave the Highlanders a much deserved win and a great start for the Highlanders, considering where they did finish last year. Jamie Joseph, obviously, a big win for him, considering, will he be there with the All Blacks? I'm not too sure, but I guess for the Highlanders to have a good start, especially against a derby like the Crusaders, and the way they did do it, it's a great start for their season, for being round one, getting a win over them at the Crusaders.
Miracle Failagi, I remember a few years ago, he was tall and skinny and athletic. He looks like he's put on 15 kg and he's still athletic.
I think he's faster.
Yeah?
Man, the Fijian winger, he just burnt. Like gave the old, I thought there's no way he's not getting caught. Yeah. And he just canted home. Like he looks like he's put on size, but it looks like he's spent a summer doing power.
Yeah.
Like there's a big difference between squatting big and lifting weights, but when you start doing the power lifts, that's when you start to see your speed just increase massively. And I feel like he's just been clean and jerking all summer.
That's
the Olympics next.
Be a good summer.
You think about the first time we did see Miracle Failagi, right? It was when got given an opportunity. Correct me if I'm wrong, don't quote me on this. I'm pretty sure this is right. Comes from the Samoa kind of setup. Isn't really in a high performance, and it's just amazing that now he's in year 3 or year 4. Been able to be with Moana Pacifica, obviously played NPC rugby as well. So just shows that the progression of his growth. And when you do get an athlete like that and you put in time and work through the years, been able to do that through skill set, SNC, obviously he's done a lot of squat and cleaning, whatever he is doing, because I think scored 3 tries for the Moana Pacifica on the weekend, and I think with Ardie Severe leaving, it kind of just looks at possibly Miracle Failagi might be the answer in terms of what Ardie Severe gave them last year. Seems like Miracle Failagi might be doing the same, considering how he went so good on that first game against the Drua.
And I know I picked them, bro.
Mate, you had me the whole week. I was terrible. I didn't pick the Waratahs. I picked the Drua. I had a shocking week. Absolutely,
I don't think they're getting enough love for how hot that was to go over there and win.
Yeah.
Like 20-minute, 3-minute breaks, 20-minute half time. I don't know. They were falling off a cliff rapidly in that last 20, but they are fit. Like that is not a place that you can. I was like, it was tough to it was well into your mid-30s. Humidity probably at 80%. oh, man, that was impressive.
So, Brendan, you got to hit him hard and hit him early in those conditions, right? That's what they did.
The fact that they got it to such a great start, and whether they talked about getting a great start, but look, I think the fact that they were 21-0 up after 16 minutes, and I guess that try just after half time, when you kind of saw the Fijian draw coming at the back of that first half, they scored that try, and then they were able to hold on, because especially in Lautoka, I've talked around a lot how teams really struggle. Crusaders have struggled there. A lot of other teams have been able to struggle, but I think to Jippa's point, the fitness and the capability to be able to score that try in the 77th minute to ice that game, to be able to stay in it and trying conditions, the first game of the year, that's a hell of a result for the Modern Pacific. I didn't pick them. I picked the draw. I didn't pick a lot of teams right, actually. If we were still doing that draw, the picks, Ross, I'd be in absolutely last in the competition. So a hell of a result. So the consistency hasn't changed, boys. Whether it's 2026, I'm the same. I'm miserable. So
I was so
very good
close.
result for the Modern Pacific.
I was so
That's for
close
sure.
to crowing because I was adamant if the Blues won, I was like, I'm going 5 from 5 here. There's no way the Brumbies are losing. And I was about to chirp him, and I just thought, keep your powder dry because you'll jinx the Blues.
Oh, it's a good
I should have said it. Maybe they would have won.
Yeah. Speaking of the Blues, now we caught up with Stephen Perofeta just a couple of days ago and had a really good chat with him about, I suppose, getting through the injury that he sustained, the calf injury. He's had a string of injuries throughout his career, and Stephen had a difficult time. You can catch the entire interview on our Aotearoa Rugby Pod official YouTube channel, where he gets into it. But here's a bit of a snippet of what Stephen Perofeta went through and the way that players deal with injuries, especially chronic ones.
Definitely came with its challenges around being out of the game and not doing what I love and what I get paid to do, essentially. It was tough. Like, I found myself isolating myself and distancing myself from family, partner. But the good thing was that I had help and support, which I'm truly a bit blessed about.
Interesting, honest stuff from Stephen Perofeta, who's back. Obviously, Razor was a big fan of his, and he played a big role whenever he was fit within the All Blacks, had some superb games for the All Blacks, but has never quite been able to get the flow because of his injury woes. So please go and catch that full interview at Aotearoa Rugby Pod official channels. It's a really, really good one. It's worth a watch. Jippa, when you do have those ongoing things and it takes you away from the game you love, how much of a struggle is it, as well, I suppose, as the mates that you get to spend every day with?
Well, when you get 2 or 3, you start sort of questioning, is your body going to be able to sort of withstand the demands of the game, and start probably internalising far too much, and you go into your shell. I think it's different for everyone, but I just think you need hope. And he's definitely found that through his faith and reconnecting with, I suppose, his religion and his church, and I suppose having that ability to say that, this is all in God's plan, as he mentioned a couple of times. And for me, that was, okay, if I do get back, I am not going to complain about training. I'm not going to want to miss a training. I'm not going to want to miss a game. And I'm never going to take a day for granted. You're getting to do what you love. Just play. Do your prep. Be consistent in your prep, but just play. I wished I'd come to that sooner, but unfortunately, with everything in life, you have to experience the downs to, I suppose, get the glory.
Brenna, the body is a thing to manage for a rugby player, I suppose, as well, isn't it? Like, so often you'd spend so much of your time unable to reach the potential because you're managing that back, or you're managing that knee, and you're having to get through each day just to do what you want. That mustn't be an easy life.
Touch wood, I've been pretty lucky not to be able to have too many injuries in my career, but I think, seeing from afar with some players that have, just haven't been able to get over that hurdle with their injuries. They do all that hard work and then been able to, I guess, have another setback, and I can only imagine how difficult, that is mentally, to be able to think, is my body going to be able to operate and get back to where I want to? But I think, when you have that great support system, whether it's through your faith or being able to do that internally with yourself, or having a really good support system in and around you to give you that hope and to give you that belief and that, that affirmation to be able to keep going. And then when, then hopefully you come at the back end of it and you'll be able to have that consistency and being able to play a lot more. So yeah, Stevie's had a really, a really tough time, but I guess, in that interview, you found out a little bit more around his faith and being able to come back to that. And, hopefully now for the Blues and I guess for New Zealand rugby, he can get back to that form and be able to get some consistent runs on the board, because when he is playing, he was in that All Black squad, and, there are, opportunities. I think, post the World Cup. Now, whether he's going to be there or not, I'm not too sure. But, the 10s that are there at the moment, you'd have to think after the World Cup, there will be some opportunities. So hopefully for him, he's able to stay injury-free and can now play and being able to be on the field a little bit more longer.
Yeah, it's great to see a player come back like that. Go to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod official YouTube page, catch that interview. What we will be doing now is posting content throughout the week, so extended analysis, interviews, those kind of things, and giving you a little bit more as you go on, both on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get the shows like that, and keep an eye on our socials as well, at Aotearoa Rugby Pod official, across all the different social channels that you can get, and keep in touch with what we're putting out throughout the week. Now, we've had a really good suggestion from Morris Lee. He sent us an email at arp@fandomedia.co.nz. He really enjoys the show, he says, but what he'd like us to do is every single week pick the team of the week and give a good reason as to why you think that is the team of the week. Chipper, when you look at this weekend, it doesn't have to be the best team necessarily, but who is your team of the week?
You have to go the Landers.
Yeah.
I'm humming and hawing between the Landers and Moana Pacifica. That's a hard one for me, just because I know how hard that heat is. But, the Highlanders are becoming the champion hunters. Like they did it to the Blues last year, round 2. They've done it to the Crusaders.
Yeah, look, I think the biggest surprise would be the Highlanders, but I think, to go a little bit different, I'm actually going the teams that I didn't pick. So to be able to save my ass here, I will be picking actually the Moana Pacifica, being able to get that result in Lautoka, just with how difficult and how humid it was. And our friends, the Waratahs, being able to get the win over the Reds, which they haven't been able to do a lot. So if I had to pick a team of the week, Ross, it would actually be Moana Pacifica and our friends, the Waratahs from Sydney, Australia.
Right, and who would be your player of the week out of those teams?
You can't go past Miracle Failagi. I think the performance that he put in that heat, we've touched on how hard it is in Lautoka, and anytime you score 3 tries in a game as a loose forward, that's pretty hard to beat. But it's all his effort areas that he's able to do. We talked around the bulk and how much bigger he's got, but it's the efficiency of what he's operating at. And I think what he's been able to do with Ardie Severe going, hopefully he can continue that form and being able to be that that spearhead of what Ardie Severe did last year at the Moana Pacifica.
For that game, I go Willie Havili. His game management is so good. 250-22s early. Got them off to the hot start they needed. But Cam Miller, he is making a big statement this season, I think.
I would be going with Will Jordan, because I just felt like you said,
yeah,
he was a man amongst boys. It was crazy. Absolutely crazy. Thank you, Morris, for your tip. And if you want to send us an email, please do so. If you've got any ideas for the show, we're happy to follow through with those.
Can I do one more?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Morris, I like your segment. Young player, Torian Barnes.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Catches it halfway. So I heard the story about preseason that he caught it maybe at the 22 and just went straight Harry Wilson style up the guts.
Yeah.
But he did it he ran in, I think it was Jerome Brown.
Yeah.
Just straight at him. He's a guy from Canterbury that hasn't played a lot. He has come and made every poster winner in terms of preseason. He's held out Anton Segner.
Yeah.
That's massive. Segner came on and you can see that competition's going to be good because he got 2 turnovers that were crucial.
Great to see those stories too, like Tupaea last year, not necessarily dominant in NPC, but, sometimes the pathways don't work for everyone.
No, you've got to take a different route. Talk to Kal Tuinokawhawhia.
Yeah.
Come to Takapuna. That's where they guide All Blacks late in their careers.
How old were you when you got into the All Blacks?
26. Yeah, 26 on debut, but I turned 27 14 days later.
You'd been around the block a little. How many years of NPC by then?
I debuted in 2007.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about our tipping for this weekend in Super Rugby. Right, so Friday.
Don't ask me.
Brenna, we're coming straight to you.
Don't ask me, mate.
Your friends at the Hurricanes, you called them as the dark horse for the year. They're hosting MP. We haven't seen the Canes just yet. They had that first week bye. What does that do for their chances?
Well, you're going to have a confident Moana coming into the Cape Tin, I think, if it is there. So, I can't knock back the Hurricanes, I think. And I picked them at the start of the year, being a dark horse with the depth that they have in their squad. Now, I did see that Ruben Love might have been injured at some stage, maybe at training last week, so which was a little bit of a disappointment. They do have Brett Cameron there, so hopefully for Hurricanes fans, it isn't too serious for Ruben Love. I think, it'd be great to see him be at 10, but they've got some great depth with Brett Cameron. But, I think I'll be picking the Hurricanes. But in saying that, the Moana Pacifica team will be very, very confident having that win over in Lautoka. Now, whether the flight back and, I guess, being able to rehydrate after a big performance like that, it is a professional environment now, but, that might have a little bit of a toll. But you would not be surprised at all if the Moana Pacific did get up with the performance that they had on the weekend over at the draw.
Hurricanes.
Hurricanes?
Yep.
That easy.
Safa Moore, player of the day.
He's going to be your player of the week.
He is so good. He is looking ready to rock and roll.
All right, okay. Waratahs draw.
Waratahs.
Yeah, easy. Waratahs, Brent?
Jorgensen for player of the day.
Yeah, 8 tries.
Waratahs.
Okay. On Saturday, Bryn, the Highlanders host the Chiefs.
I think the Chiefs. Yeah, I'll be picking the Chiefs, and I think, whether they change their squad and they bring the All Blacks to be able to come back and to be able to be in the starting lineup, I'm not too sure, but I do look at even last year, their ability in that last 20 minutes, they were able to bring on a lot of All Blacks or been able to have a lot of experienced guys coming on the back end of the game, and we saw that against the Blues. And whether they want to have that same tactic, I'm not too sure, but they do have a lot of depth in that squad. So I just think that last 20 minutes with the Chiefs might be a little bit too much for the Highlanders.
Yeah, I'd say D-Mac will be back as well. That changes the ballpark.
Although Josh Jacob looked pretty solid.
Oh, Josh Jacobs, awesome.
Yeah.
But obviously he's going to the Landers next year, so I'm assuming they're going to play Damien at 10 for the majority of the time. So I'll go the Chiefs.
Okay.
A tight one.
Right, so the Blues, they're making their way over to Perth, right? So
Why do I just get butterflies in my stomach? I'm already anxious. I'll go the Blues, 13 plus.
13 plus. Goodness me, okay.
Yeah, I think the Blues won. I think they're not a team anymore that this would be seen as a banana skin a few years ago, but now I think they'll come back, taking the learnings from that Chiefs game and have a pretty dominant performance against the Western Force.
Right, okay. And then the last game, Sunday game, Crusaders versus the Brumbies, one of the classic rivalries in rugby. How do you see that one playing out?
I think in the last, 6 years, I've never gone against the Crusaders roster. I don't think it'll be changing, but look, I think the Brumbies are always tough though. Like, I know the rivalry that actually is with the Crusaders and the Brumbies, so no doubt Rob Penny and that co, after a pretty disappointing loss, will be able to get that one back. And I think the breakdown area is going to be a big part for them. Look, I think any times the Brumbies have had success, and we do know that the Brumbies are very good around that breakdown area, the collision area on both sides of the ball. They're going to have to sort themselves out there. They can't have 9 turnovers against this Brumbies team. So there's enough firepower out in that Brumbies team. If they don't get it right, it'll be a tough day. But they'll rectify that, and I think the Crusaders will win 12 and under.
That Brumbies team looked really good in the second half.
They did, and they're very strong in the set piece. And I suppose the big difference is they're not big pilferers. If the Brumbies allow 11 entries, I think, rather than turning over 8 times, I think they'll come away with 8 tries.
Yeah, it was interesting just across the board, I suppose, watching both in the Six Nations and in Super Rugby. There appeared to be 3 stats. It didn't matter what happened in any other stat on the field, but if you were bad with penalties, you were bad with turnovers, and you were bad at turning your 22 entries in. Those appear to be the 3 key stats in rugby right now. You can have all the possession in the world, you can have all the territory in the world, but those 3 things, whether you have some or none, appear to make the difference.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's one more though, especially in the Six Nations, is where you play. Like I mentioned about Scotland last week against Italy, played a lot between the 22 and halfway in their attacking zone. Mate, England were like, they played, I think they had 7% in the 22. Like it just was, I don't know, they just went away from what was working for them. It was strange. I know the penalties and stuff there, but I do think when teams start overplaying, you almost feel they're chasing the game.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's better not having the ball.
The defence dictates so much of the game right now, and I think even the kicking game is a really big part of that. I think Jip has touched on around that kind of no man's zone. We've touched on a lot with a lot of teams over the years. If you don't get that right, you just give people opportunities. If they're really good at the breakdown and you get a pilfer, that's a penalty. It's 3 points. You'll be able to then go and have a 22 entry. And if you are efficient, you can get that right, you can score points. So I just think with the escort law that has changed as well, I think teams been able to get the ball back. And I think what we are seeing, Jip, as well, is that counter-attack ability. If you are able to be able to win that ball in the air and get that ball back, whether it's through a tap or get the ball as a catch, teams are able to use that ball off that. So, I think that'd probably be the best way that I would answer it.
Okay, let's get into some tipping. Britta, this weekend, first up, England versus Ireland. 2 teams who didn't do everything that were expected of them on the weekend. England at home, how do you see this playing out?
I just think England. I just don't. I think Ireland are struggling at the moment. I just think that their attack and what they're able to do, and with what we probably saw, when they were down here a few years ago, I just don't think it's the same team. There's a few different moving pieces. Sexton's not there. I think Bundy's not there. And there's a little bit of change in the guard in certain positions. So I just think England, the physicality, and I think they'll get back to their DNA of not being able to play too much footy in their half. And I think when they do get into their half, they'll just be a lot more better than what we saw in the 22 entries. So I think what were they? They were just in the low teens with their percentage rate. So I think they'll be a lot better, and I'll be picking England to be able to run over the top of Ireland, I think, in a pretty convincing victory.
More Pollock, baby. England all day. England all day.
The fan club is well and truly in action again.
It certainly is.
All right, Wales against Scotland.
Scotland.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just can't see the Welsh doing anything.
Dry weather footy in Millennium, so I'm not too sure if the roof will be closed, but yeah, if it is,
They might
closed,
open the roof,
if it is, you want to have the roof open, and hopefully it's raining.
What they saw in Italy, they'll be opening that roof if it's raining.
They were praying for snow.
Yeah.
Too good, yeah, Scotland too good for Wales.
France at home against Italy. This is an interesting game because I know we talked France up ad nauseum, and I know that a bunch of the Box supporters on the weekend were like, we gave it to them and we were down a man. Stop talking up France like this, and to some degree they've
they've won World Cup and World Cup. They can say that.
They've got a point, yeah.
They've got a great point.
They've got a point.
But we can't just keep saying there's only one team. Those would be a short show.
Give us some hope. Give us some hope.
We need some hope. I tell you what, I agree with you. Like it depends. Like I said last week, you just don't know which French side's going to turn up.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm saying. Like if Italy can give me another, big rock performance, they might not win. They might still have a high error rate. I don't expect that to turn around in a week. But if that forward pack can keep doing what they're doing physically, especially on defence, legally, 6 penalties, it's 1-12 surely.
Right. If the French team that turned up and beat Ireland faces the Italian team, which is able to clean up some of its unforced errors, how does that game play out? Is it France all day?
Jipper like to say Pollock baby. I'm going to say DuPont baby. That's the difference. That is the difference there, men. We can talk about as much as we want. The Italians doing whatever they've been doing, and we've waxed lyrical about them.
Weren't you on the bus? Did he not say Italy's his new favourite team? And he's just jumped straight off them back to DuPont.
To be fair, years at Harbour means your favourite team doesn't necessarily give you what you want.
There is common sense, lads. I love it. I love Italy, and they are my new favourite team. But when you've got DuPont, baby, then you don't go against that man. So I'll be picking DuPont, baby, the French beating the Italians in a close game.
All day long.
Yeah, I like the French, at home.
Okay. And you can catch our full Six Nations chat on Aotearoa Rugby Pod official. I keep on saying it throughout the episode, but you will be able to catch all of it there if you want it and see everything that we had to say about this competition.
Like and subscribe, and we might get DuPont on.
Yeah.
The more likes and subscribes, the more opportunity we have to get DuPont.
That's our coup. That's our coup by the end of the year.
What would be a good number, Ross?
A good number to pay for DuPont to come on the show?
No. What would be a good number of subscribers? What would be the tipping point we would have to get them on?
We'd probably have to end up into tens of thousands. We're early days yet.
Should we say 20,000?
20,000.
If we get to 20,000, Bryn will get DuPont on.
Get him on. I'll do everything I can, lads, to get that man on.
Now that's us this week for the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Please go to our channels at Aotearoa Rugby Pod official and send us an email at arp@fandommedia.co.nz. We've got a few emails we haven't been able to get to this week, but we'll try to get to them in the weeks coming up. So please keep on sending them through. We'll, of course, be sending out our newsletter each week to keep you updated with what we're doing. So if you want to be on that, also email there and we'll get that out to you each week to tell you what's on the show. Now, have a look at our partners, stuff.co.nz. You can find the podcast there on the YouTube channel. You can also see shortened clips and full written stories about things that we're up to and people that we're catching up with. Go over to the Rugby Pass app. You'll find the show there as well for all of you global fans, and also have a look at their statistics. There's some absolute rippers in there as well. So you can catch us in all sorts of different places. We'll be releasing stuff throughout the week, also on our audio podcast, whether on Apple or Spotify or anywhere else. Plenty of places to catch us. Give us a like and give us a subscribe wherever you are, and we'll continue to do what we can to bring you the rugby content that we love to bring you. So on behalf of all the boys, thanks once again for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Mā te wā.